The City of Buena Park's Cultural and Fine Arts Division proudly presents a solo exhibition by artist Evalynn Alou. Evalynn Alou's work reflects her curiosity and emotional thoughts about the universe, the earth, and the forces that are forever in action, having a fascination with the strength and magnitude of those forces, whether gentle or outrageously strong. All play a part in many of the pieces she has worked on for the past 7 years, attempting to convey not only beauty, but the ugliness that can develop from our own Mother Nature and beyond.
Very, very young, and I'm going to say even before I was in school. Probably the most important thing that I remember as a child, I was probably 3 or 4 years old. My father, who was an amazing artist, has 5 daughters, and he would actually give us art lessons, and he built special little benches and everything where he would give us these lessons. And I remember learning how to do a 3-dimensional cube when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. And by the time I was in school, first kindergarten, I was already doing stuff that kids usually didn't do, and I have to give all that credit to my father, who was amazing. I got a lot of good art early in life, but I married very young. I don't want to tell you, I was 17, married very young, and pretty much that ended my art, but I always had a love for it. So I started to self-teach. You know, I was teaching myself. I began with oil paints at home, and then I started having children. I raised 2 boys, and by the time I had my second one, I realized the desire was there, even though I didn't associate with artists, other than my father, who couldn't really pursue that because he had to work and raise his daughters. He was the only one that I really could confide in with my art. So as I realized there really is a love for art, I put myself back into school. And my goal was, my 3-year-old son, I was going to graduate from school before he did. So I went back, went to Santa Ana College, also went to Cal State Fullerton. It took me 12 years to get my degree in art. I loved every minute of it. But then again, I'm raising boys, so I didn't really pursue it as much as I should. I was what I called a closet artist. Everything went under the bed and gave it to the family, whatever. But it just gradually grew, and I realized, okay, there's more to this art thing. I need to find artists to associate with. I became a member of the Orange Art Association, Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, where I'm a member of both of those now. And basically, that's what my life was like as an artist, but it took me 12 years to get my degree. It led me to teaching. I started teaching in 1982, I think it was, or 85, somewhere around there I started teaching. And that was so I could make a living, have an income coming in. And I taught for 27 years. And the teaching was wonderful. And with my art background and teaching for a private school, I taught for Oak Ridge Private School, I realized how important the arts were for a teacher to have as far as educating children, because any subject, whether it be math, science, you name it, if you throw a little art into it in some way or in a creative way, those kids really, really learn. So I loved my teaching. Now that I'm retired, but I am still their head of their art program over at Oak Ridge Private School. So I've stayed in teaching. I don't think I'll ever break away from it, actually. I'm a firm believer that children must be creative, exercise both sides of their brain, is what I'm saying. And I feel that art is so not happening in the schools now that it's really a crime. Music, to me, it plays a big part in when I'm creating, because I'm always listening, like I said, to jazz. Usually, not always. I do throw on the classical stations a lot too, but music has a big influence on my art. It really does. When I create, there's different ways I go about it. Number one, if I am doing a painting for a specific theme or a show that's coming up at the Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, for instance, I will have somewhat of an idea of what I'm going to do, but I never really know for sure what's going to happen until I start putting it down on the canvas. And I work a lot with preconceived ideas, but also a lot with just spontaneity. What's going to happen? Where am I going? It's coming from here somewhere, and it's like it may develop as it's growing, and sometimes it'll just build up. You know, I do a lot of building up with my paintings, but a lot of them I have something in my head. For instance, can we talk about this one? This one being known as Riptide. It all happened because we were in Oregon, on the coast of Bandon, Oregon, up on the cliff looking down, and there were horrendous riptides happening. So in my head, I didn't paint it there. I could not paint this there. This is a riptide. I came home and the vision of that riptide stayed with me, and this is what came out. When I was teaching myself, I was using oil paints and I was doing realism. Everything was realistic, of course, and that was good for me. And I still do that. About once a year, I'll paint one realistic painting. I'm working on a ballerina right now because I've wanted to do this one painting for a long time, and I thought, okay, it's time to pull myself back in a little bit, you know. So I will do that. But if you were just starting, I would recommend you start with the beginning with realism and just look for simple things to put on the canvas first, you know, and try to, or look at an object and try to paint that, or draw it, even draw, just draw and draw first. Do a lot of drawing, and then move yourself into painting. Then as you go, then you can go into abstract art. It's not as easy as people realize. People think, you know, oh, well, she just sits there and she throws that paint on there. You know, no, it's not quite like that. So I would stay away from this unless you really have an eye for it, until you've learned the real, how to really put your work down, whether it be drawing. If you can draw, you can paint. I'd like to talk about this painting for just a moment. This is called Mud Pot. And when I approach a painting like this, if you look at it very closely, you're going to see how the paint is actually rippling right here. Now this is actually, I'm using a latex paint here, and I'm putting it down very first thing I do. Let it dry, then, not totally dry because it's thick, you tilt your canvas, and then as soon as it gets to a point where you want it, you go ahead and set it flat to dry. And then you have to let that dry for probably a week before you can even begin. This has to do with Yellowstone National Park, where the mud pots are. This painting has to do with one of the smallest things that we know, and that's the quarks, which are very beautiful if you ever see them in pictures that they think that they look like, and that's what this one is. Last year, when there were so many fires going on in Orange County, I was inspired to do this, and it basically has to do with firestorms, and also the horrific firestorm that was in Yarnell, Arizona. That's what came out at that time for me, was that painting. And I never know for sure. I knew that I was going to be doing something about fire, but when I put it down, I don't have a preconceived idea of what it's going to look like until I start working, really. Then it comes out. This large painting here was done for the Forces show, the Forces exhibition at the Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, and it has to do with lava flows, really. So that was, that's what that's about. I went through a period of about a year and a half where I did nothing but black, white, and red. Something that's just a little bit different. Black, white, and red is what I named most of them, and I'm not always sure what they mean. I have no idea at this point what they came on. I'm looking for composition, color, darks, lights, and things like that. This painting, it's kind of a sad painting because at the time I painted it, my mother was very sick with emphysema, and I, having a lot of energy like I do, got very emotional about the whole process that happens when a person is dying of emphysema. So this is called Energy and Emotion, and it has to do with a lot with my mother's passing. This one's called On the Edge, and it has to deal with people who build on the edges, such as Dana Point, on the edge of the cliffs. They will erode away in time. It's just a matter of time. A lot of time, but they will erode away eventually. So that's what this one's about. This one has to deal, it's called Phlox. The paint at the very top, again, acrylic, that was the first part laid down. Put it out in this very hot sun. It was a very hot summer day, and the paint cracks. So you have to know about how thick to put that down, otherwise it'll just move. Put it down at a certain thickness, and the paint cracks in that heat. So this inspired me. When it was cracking, I thought, okay, let's do this ocean. So it's a quick little ocean with the birds flying over it.
My name is Imani Tolliver. I'm the Cultural and Fine Arts Supervisor for the City of Buena Park. I hope you enjoyed our show today featuring the beautiful art of Evalynn Alou. Wasn't it interesting? I loved her stories and her journey that brought her from a closeted artist to an artist that now shows all over Southern California. If you are inspired by her pieces, if you are an artist yourself and you would like to show here at City Council Chamber, we'd love to see your work. Please visit buenapark.com for all submission guidelines or call us at our office. Take care and enjoy creating.